Welcome to God and Autobiography, the podcast. I'm Scott Langdon. When I was growing up in my parents' house, there was this little plaque that hung on the wall in the living room. It had two hands in a praying position, and underneath those hands, a short prayer. It read, "God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference." I'd come to learn that prayer is called the Serenity Prayer. And this week, as Jerry and Abigail return for another intimate dialogue, the two discuss suffering and how we can face suffering not only in our aging years, but as humans in whatever era of life we might be in. I hope you enjoy the episode.
Well, hello, sweetheart. Thanks for joining me again for an intimate dialogue. And as general, we always start with me asking, putting some topics on the table based on the last episode of From God to Jerry to You. And the very last one that I just recorded, in fact, yesterday, was reflecting on what I called, without specifying them, the travails of age. I know you don't believe you rightly reject the hypothesis of age. You like the idea age is just a number, and that there's a lot to that, On the other hand, there's certain wear and tear, and I often feel myself like a car with 150,000 miles on it. And, this or that has to be fixed. And some of those are just ordinary decline you expect. And some of the things we've experienced recently, sweetheart, are things you don't expect, that you thought something that always worked just right without effort suddenly stops working right. And some of these affect just oneself. Some affect the interaction of the people of the partners in the relationship. And it's hard to be prepared for those, especially the ones that occur where you didn't expect them. It's just, whoa, what is this? And how do we adjust to it? And none of the things we have are, you might say, serious. Nevertheless, they're challenging. And they do involve, it seemed to me, a kind of suffering. And because you're gotta, oh my gosh, how do I adjust to this now? Yeah. Or what can I do about it now? And that led me to go back and look at the prayers in God and Autobiography. And I always remember being told, suffering, God to Jerry, suffering is the law of growth in the universe. It's the law of growth in the universe. And when I went back and reread those passages and then read the next chapter where God asked me to look at a time of my life, heart attack, which involved suffering mainly. The good hospital was wonderful. Everybody's like angels. The next hospital, they were terrible. And I was kind of having to fight with the caretakers. And you sometimes have to do that in a hospital. But anyway, that was certainly a difficult time. And as I reviewed that, God had asked, go back and I reviewed it. And God says, ask me, what did you learn from that? And I remember when I told you the ways my mother had been extremely hard on me when we first were getting to know each other and kind of shared, our life stories with each other. And my mother lacked empathy and was hypercritical and so forth. And those leave wounds in a little 5-year-old. And the wounds, of course, stay for a lifetime. Anyway, you ask, what did you learn from that you wouldn't have known otherwise? And in fact, you gave an answer. You said you thought I was sensitive to women. And it's true. I was always paying attention to my mother's moods, trying to soothe her, trying to make her feel better. she was upset. Not only had these, you might say, character traits that were difficult, but she lost a child, my younger brother, and cried every day for it. And years later would just tear up at a baby food commercial or something like that. So I was trying to do my best to soothe her during these years of her great pain. And maybe that did develop a kind of sensitivity, paying attention to how a woman I'm with is feeling, the moods and feelings and so forth. And so the question, what did you learn from that, applies to our current situation as well. We're having these travails, and I call them suffering lessons, the lessons from suffering. And what occurred to me, and that I reported in the God from God to Jerry, what occurred to me was, well, two things that are closely related to each other. Stoic wisdom, which says don't worry over what you can't control. And the more specific form of that wisdom, you might say, of lots of wisdom, in what's called the Serenity Prayer, which is virtually the official prayer of Alcoholics Anonymous, though it goes back to the Protestant theologian Reinhold Niebuhr. It was originally something he had included in several of his public prayers. But I'll just repeat it. People probably know it, but I'll read it. I looked it up. And this is the prayer, so-called Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can change, and the wisdom to know the difference, which is not easy. You ponder it. It's not actually easy to know the difference. And this Serenity Prayer, the Stoics were talking about everything in general. There's an earthquake. Well, you can't prevent earthquakes. You can't do anything about the earthquake except run around afterwards. But you can't prevent it. The Serenity Prayer, and the reason it's so relevant to AA, is that it's what you're looking inward at yourself. And what about myself? You got things about yourself you like and things you don't like, things that you see as strengths, things you see as weaknesses, things that make life harder for you. Anyway, of all of those things, which ones can you change? And which ones would you be better off just accepting? And so that was the less I've looked at our current situation, the travails of age, as I call it. That seemed to be relevant. That, okay, what in our situation can we change? What can we not? And how on earth are we going to tell the difference?
Gee, Jerry, I think I'm terrible at this.
Yeah, what are you terrible at? Which part of it?
First of all, accepting the sort of lower ceiling or lowered expectations or contracted scope that goes with age.
You're not good at acceptance.
I'm not
Is that what you're saying?
at lining it up, and asking myself, do I accept this or not? Take my somewhat age-related, I guess, chronologically attached neuropathy.
Your right foot just doesn't work right.
Yeah,
and it's
I'm
ultimately a neurological thing all the way up to the brain.
Yeah,
that the foot doesn't quite know what to do.
I'm not good at all at accepting it. And we go periodically to California where there's a treatment for it that purports to reverse what normal medical science calls irreversible. I paid, I forget, $160 to a Park Avenue neurologist who told me I'd be in a wheelchair in a year. And I said to myself inwardly, I hate you. And,
Okay.
and we found by accident, by providence, this neurologist who um, uh, has a way of that purports to reverse the neurovascular contractions or sedimentations that create this condition, and certainly has prevented it from getting worse in the way the Park Avenue guy predicted. And it may even be getting better or
Yeah, this very
risks.
morning, we were
Yes.
commenting that although you walk with a cane, you're often, as you went from one floor to another in our multi-floor townhouse, you would forget the cane,
Yeah.
that you're walking well enough
Uh,
that you simply forget to use it some of the time, at least at home on flat ground, nice flat surface. Uh,
I
so
mean,
it's getting better. So
yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. So well, this goes to this question of the wisdom. I mean, your strategy, as far as I can tell in life, you don't accept, you might say, the aging paradigm. You
No.
just don't accept that, oh, you've got to be in decline and that
Yeah.
next year is
And
going to be worse than this year. And then the year after that, even worse. And
they they always told me, when you're 25, you're over. That was back then, whenever it was. And when you're 30, that's when I began to teach. And my colleagues tried out, you're 30 and you're unmarried and you're a has-been. And I just said, you want to be my friend, whoever you are? Guy was named John. Um, don't I don't want to hear about 30 and unmarried. And the same goes if you don't want to be my friend. I just toughed it out. I did not want these um, little power games that have to do with the imputation to the other person, usually the woman, of loss of power. I didn't want to play the losing hand in those games. If I lose power, okay, that's too bad. I guess it's too bad, but I don't want the social dynamics, the power games within social life to be stacked against me. So, and with a woman, when I was setting forth in life, you were allowed to be about as old as 22. That was a little before feminism hit the marquees. And, and I'd get to be 23 and 24 and not married. And everybody was piling up to tell me what I no longer could hope for and what I no longer could be. So I considered all these social mandates about aging to be enemy fire. I just didn't want to play. If I'm supposed to deteriorate, it's not going to be on your timetable, Buster, because I know that you're playing a power game against me. I mean, now, we live together. There aren't colleagues playing those games of feminism or whatever ideological armor has come on scene so that people are more hesitant about playing that card. Has changed somewhat the social dynamic, but I consider that for a woman, these um, these stereotypes have to do with social power, and I'm very wary. I just, what are you playing that you're playing that card with me? Now, there's another question. How old am I? Or, how falling apart am I? And I trust you. You're not going to do that to me. You love me. You like me. We're friends. We're colleagues. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, God of Israel. That's not supposed to happen either. By the time we fell in love, I was way past the sell-by date.
Right.
So, that wasn't in the cards to begin with. That's not on the social map. Nothing.
Yeah, we were
I've
certainly
done.
at an age at that point. We both had a first marriage, but
Yeah.
at the point we met, we'd each been divorced for some years,
Mhm.
and people would have said at that point, "You're not going to find anyone." I think you had a friend say, "If you find love, I'll believe in God." It was
Yeah,
so
that was
improbable
a
that this would be
feminist
like a miracle.
friend.
It would take a miracle
Yeah,
at that point.
she said, "Are you still looking for Mr. Right?" Because she had been a founding mother of the feminist movement, and was telling me about, the sort of bittersweet, funny, caricaturic jokes that she and other founding mothers were telling each other with regard to finding the right guy. Um, and and I said, yeah, I am looking for Mr. Right. Or, I haven't closed the door because I don't know. Let's see, why didn't I close the door? I thought it was bad faith. It's one thing if your body says, we are dying, kid, so wrap it up, pack it in, and get ready to leave this terrestrial vale of tears. Okay, I can do that. Any of us can do that. It's called mortality, and you get to do that. Age. I don't know.
Well, I sometimes want to say to people, don't die before you're dead.
Yeah.
They start packing it in. They think, oh, well, I'm past 60 now. I'm past 70 now. I can't do anything. I remember a story of a guy who was a driver at NEH in my NEH years, and he was reporting how he went home after work one day, and his his mother, who was 70, something like that, had bought a piano. And he said, "Mom, why'd you buy a piano? You don't play a piano." And she said, "I'm going to learn." And I thought, good for her.
Yeah.
She's not going to be a concert pianist, although Grandma Moses, became a famous artist starting at the age of who knows what. It's called Grandma for a reason. And you never know for sure what's going to happen. And so anyway, live with the you might say the full throttle in that sense, as doing what you think you want to do, what you feel called to do or want to do. Um, don't start checking out too soon, like the closing down some of the rooms in your house. You might say, don't start closing down.
Yeah. Be careful about that. I'm not a fan of Stoicism.
Yeah.
I mean, I as I understand it, I used to teach these texts. What happened was the polis, the free city state in which philosophy was born and first flourished, the city of Athens that Socrates walked, and Plato, and in a somewhat modified way, Aristotle also lived in, that was gone. And instead, there were big empires, and they represented the loss of political power to the voting individual, the transfer of the powers of governing to a central authority over which one wielded precious little influence. And so Stoicism came to give the ancient world the Serenity Prayer, accept the things I cannot be empowered to do, and the wisdom to know the difference. There's a lot that Socrates and Plato could do that the Stoic can no longer do. And I just don't know. I have, in addition to the Greco-Roman stream in culture, I have the Hebraic stream in culture. We all do, and I have it by inheritance. And I can't recall a single psalm, a single verse in the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, that says, Jesus says that's under, and he didn't know he was the first Christian. He thought he was Jewish. Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. That's the whole country's under foreign occupation, and unto God the things that are God's. So, of course, you can't use freedom you don't have. Nobody can, but you have all you can do, usually your work cut out to make a constructive, optimal use of such freedom as you have. And it with regard to age, I think the moral there, since I've told one anecdote after another about people trying to put me in the age box from the time of I was 30 on, or 23, and me climbing out of the box, I think it's important not to fold it up prematurely on the supposition that you're of an age to give up something that formerly you could do. I mean, if there's something you can't do that you used to be able to do, you'll know that. But I wouldn't get ahead of the game.
Well, and one thing, it's people preach acceptance a lot, and that is a Stoic wisdom, it's advice. But there is the second part of the Serenity Prayer, which is have the courage to change what you can change. And the too easy acceptance, say, well, I just accept it all, whatever horrors are going on, including maybe horrors in the social order or in the dysfunctional family or something. Well, maybe you can do something about it. This, that, or the other thing in your relationship, in your parenting, or being a child, or your community and your neighbors. If something's wrong, maybe you can do something about it, and right down to the management of your own body. Certainly something I think you're a model of, in my own humble view, sweetheart, is you've worked assiduously in every way that you can find to maintain your physical and mental condition. Of course, you're always intellectually active, and that's something always recommended by everybody. But you also have this amazing regimen. You do more before breakfast than I do all day. And you've done the elliptical, you've done yoga, where you do yoga. I can barely, it amazes to me to watch you do it, that you can do all these different yoga postures, some of which look like the human body can't do that. Well, Abigail's human body can do it, and you just have to really work at it. Keep it going. Keep it going. A lot of these
Yeah.
things are don't think, well, now I'm old or now I'm something else, so I step out of this. But no, keep it going. And
Yeah, exactly. I, when you hit 40, they tell you that's one of those benchmarks or milestones or give it up times. God, every time you turn around, there's a whole phalanx, a chorus, like a Greek chorus, telling you to give it up now. 40 was supposed to be the cutoff point. After that, you're kind of going downhill. Um, I just don't want to get ahead of the game. When I go downhill, I'll go downhill. That means there are no more mountains to climb. There's some mountains to descend. And that's probably a full-time job too. But I don't, you have to stay congruent with who you are, what you are, your powers. You have to stay congruent with your powers, not step back from them or resign them, retire from them because others have alerted you to the fact that they think you're out of time. Our time is, I don't know, there's I sometimes think of the classical as opposed to the Hebraic in Matthew Arnold's concept of culture, two great sources of Western civilization, of what is now a quasi-global civilization. And the Hebraic or Jewish, that being the tribe of the 12 that survived, had to do with history, with staying on the timeline and one foot in front of the other. That sounds so simplistic that any child can do it, and any child can, but grown-ups have trouble. They always, they are incessantly tempted to go all Gnostic and get above the historical one thing after another of human time and get into some pink aureole cloud of mysticism or knowing better than to be part of the human condition, be part of where they are, when they are. And it seems to me the whole challenge of real life is to be where you are when you are. And if you can do that, which is often painful, it's painful. You want to be above it. You want to be outside it, because where you are when you are is often enough a time of suffering, a time of frustration, a time when some things will go as you wish and other things as you don't wish. And it is a full-time job to be on your timeline. So that is how I see this question of, darling, you are growing old, silver threads among the gold.
Pooh.
I color my hair. I don't know how many silver threads among the brunette would be there, but I'm not asking.
I prayed about our current troubles,
Yeah.
what I received in prayer was it's something like you just have to muddle through. In other words, you can't go around it, jump over it, uh, click and solve it, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, and the analogy I was given, which fits my own experience, was like grief. Grief is something, some people say, oh, let's see a smile. Well, that's, you just want to slap them when I say
And
that. No,
that's
there's nothing here to smile about. You know, my parents just died or whatever it is.
oh, it's
It's a
horrible.
time of grief, and
Yeah.
grief is itself an important human function. And when it's called for, you need to live through the grief,
Yes.
not try to get around it or under it or over it in some way. And these other challenges in life, which would, I think, very much fit your sense, sweetheart, of life on the timeline, you live life right here on the ground. You live through it. You do have God as a partner. And when you speak of serenity, I know if I, God often asks me to do things that are extremely uncomfortable, uh, part because he gives me public roles when I'm a deep introvert. Okay. But the serenity comes if God and I are in sync, then at a more fundamental level, I can be at peace. At a more fundamental level, if I feel I'm doing what God wants me to do, in fact, what I do each morning, we pray when we have breakfast, and I go through three things I pray for, and one of them is for God to lead me to what God wants me to be doing, and to, in effect, enable me to do it. You know,
Yeah.
to keep me strong and capable enough to do what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
Uh,
There, there's a turn that is that the culture is undergoing, a turn toward um, anti-Semitism and uh, being Jewish and being attuned to history and making sense of history. I have some sense of responsibility that isn't fulfilled, or as I've recently discovered, having tried one thing to sign up for or another. I can't right now become a fully signed up member of some congregation. I belong to a Reformed temple. Uh, I uh, I can, when we do Bible study, Torah study, uh, resist vocally the temptation to blame oneself, which seems to be a liberal vice. You know, when people have blood in their eye and murder in their heart, it's not my fault. Uh, it's their problem. My problem is not to get murdered. My problem is very simple, and empathizing with my would-be murderer doesn't help me solve my problem. So there is a problem when people want to kill you or dismember you socially, or caricature you, or blame you for things that are actually not at all blameworthy. That's a problem. But if I look in the larger context in which hatred of Jews becomes a problem for those who entertain the hatred and those who are the targets of it, there's a larger problem, which is, where should the culture go instead of hating Jews? That seems to me plan B. And I see myself engaged by training, by philosophical training, by my philosophical sympathy with Hegel, who tried to fathom historical, cultural, what happens to culture in human history, that it lives by some spoken or unspoken ideals, and when the realities tend to hollow out or cause a loss of trust in those ideals, the culture is in crisis, and the solution to the crisis is to reformulate ideals that are more adequate to the needs of the time. So I'm thinking in those terms. On the one hand, I'm feeling realistically threatened, but I don't, there isn't anything much I can do about that except keep alert to the actual dangers and not gloss it over with idiotic platitudes. But what I can do by virtue of my training and my interest in all these questions is try to think through, where does the culture go if it has lost some kind of faith in its own future as something desirable and can only babble on about its culpability? Every culture has culpability. Give me a break. Everybody wants to be Western, culpability or no. So it can't be that bad. But every culture needs a desideratum, needs a something to desire. And that's where there's this hollow place. And that's, no matter how old I am, as long as I can still, cut the mustard conceptually and thought-wise, that's where my thinking is going. What ought we to be desiring as a band of brothers and sisters in the culture, which may be now global? But I know anti-Semitism is global. I can't cure it. I can only ask, what actual problem is that hatred masking? Is that a substitute for? And there I can do something.
Yeah. So you have to figure out, well, what you're living for, what we collectively are living for.
Yes.
And I'm not so Hegelian as you. I always go back to Aristotle, who has a teleological conception of human nature, that by our very nature, there are certain things that constitute our fulfillment and our flourishing. And just as there are things that, the acorn, you water it and give it sunlight and it grows into a mighty oak. And so it has that teleology. We have our own more complex human teleology. And of course, it does have the kind of cultural component that Husserl makes much of, because from a cultural point of view, everything within the culture, including individuals' thinking, is shaped by the equipment that culture provides, the concepts, institutions, relationships, norms, etc. And that's also true. But on this Aristotelian conception, you do desire to flourish, and there's a romantic dimension to that, among others. There's an intellectual dimension that he made much of. Being a philosopher, he thought if you can just think about thinking, that's just the most pure thing you could be doing. Okay. And there's, I feel the human soul has a trajectory toward the divine, that's not just something it's not an add-on or something, maybe you can go over there and be sort of religious or something. But no, right in the soul itself, I think there's a romantic urge, an urge to love another person, to be loved. And there's also an intrinsic desire to connect with the divine, and which is a very special relationship. It's a very special relationship because it carries a lot of authority, for one thing. If you're in sync with God, then you're kind of living life the way you ought to.
Mhm.
And that's a blessed thing.
Yeah, there's something that uh, goes with um, those considerations in um, Torah study today in my Reformed temple. Um, we've deviated from what everybody is doing, which is reading the 5 books of Moses. We're going through the Tanakh and see what else is in there, the way Protestants do, I guess. That's the Bible. We got a long book there. And we're on the story of David, who's going to be king in Israel, but is right now just shepherd boy. Um, and there's this giant Goliath from camp of the Philistines who's fee fi fo fum, come and let me turn you into crumbs. And David says, I can fight him. And so they face off, and Goliath, pounds on his chest, and he's wearing this Greek armor, and so you can hear the clanging, and he's got the helmet and everything. And he's going to make bird food out of David. And David says, you come to me in the name of, all the phony stuff you believe in. I come to you in the name of the living God. And, and he swings his slingshot, and that turns out to do what needs doing, which is put Goliath on the horizontal. And in the discussion of this text that circled around it, it was pointed out by this one and that one, hey, people can say, they come in the name of God, and look at the jihadis. They claim to come in the name of God. And so isn't this somehow, blah, blah, blah? Yeah, this can be abused. Very good. Those are 2 religions down the road, or 2.5 religions down the road from this unique encounter in which for the first time in battle, somebody is saying this and making good on the claim. Hey, this is a drama that's happening now. And that's sort of what interests me. I think people long to be part of their own drama, to be congruent with what is happening to themselves. Of course, in the cultural context, we can't even identify a happening except in terms of the tools and concepts and memories and aspirations that we share as a group, as a collectivity, as a piece of experience in a larger story. But very interesting, sexy, real, engrossing, enticing, irreplaceable is what is for me to do now. And to clear away layers of sludge so that you are prepared to be with yourself and be with your situation unimpeded is a major job in life. The major job is to be, again, as an adult, what you probably were as a little kid, ready for the day.
Yeah, what you're saying is somehow making me think of Charles Dickens in David Copperfield says right at the beginning of the book, I am the hero of my own story. And that's what one should be, the hero of one's own story. And there's this problem with becoming so generous and open-minded that you forget what your story is. And you forget, I mean, I think one of the things we should share with each other is not just tolerance, but if I have something that seems true to me, and I can share that with you, with the next person over and over, then that's what I should do. And if I've had an experience of some kind of reality that seems to me to be some kind of reality, well, it's not very useful to say, oh yeah, but somebody else has their reality. We're not talking about them. We don't care about them. We don't know anything about them. Or if we do, we still don't care. We might know everything there is to know about some jihadi, for example, the Ayatollah who was just killed. And no doubt that Ayatollah felt he was just right with the world and he's hero of his own story. Well, we've got to be hero of our story. And that's our job, you might say. And this is a kind of Hegelian point, I think. You don't want premature synthesis. You need, we have different points of view. And let's express them. They can contend with each other. Or maybe, you're Jewish, I'm not. Well, I'm not called to be Jewish. I prayed about that early on. Should I become a Jew? No. And so I was relieved. I didn't want to become a Jew. I was guided not to affiliate with any tradition. And I have this separate assignment that didn't involve that. And so I'm advocating for that assignment. That's my job. So you have to figure out what one's own job is. What I sometimes we were talking recently about what is your calling? Do you have a calling? Or I often quote you, sweetheart, because you said about some conflict you got into. This fight has my name on it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just kind of know this. Here's a task.
Yeah.
And it has my name on it.
Yeah.
And
not always welcome.
And what?
The task that has my name on it is not always a welcome one.
No, it usually is not. That's why it's has to come to you in that way. As why they call it a calling. It's not just what you felt like doing.
No.
If you have musical talent, you feel like playing the violin or something. Well, there's a further question. Is that your calling? Is that what you should be doing? Playing the violin where and for whom and for what purpose and with what music, etc. Those are the questions that are a little larger than just what you feel like today.
Right.
What we're talking about desire in the sense you're talking about it. What's one's ultimate desire or telos, teleological thrust of one's life. It's not just what do you like or what do you feel like today. It's more fundamental than that. It's what in the heart of your being, or as I'm sometimes told in the God book, it's what your soul wants. You've got to be congruent with what your soul wants.
Yes.
And what your soul wants and what God wants are kind of like the same,
Yeah. We began this discussion with talk about our time of life when you kind of go into decline. And I wasn't willing to sign up for that because I've been told that I'm in decline ever since I was 23. And I've never found that the advice was timely. I just, okay, you think I'm in decline, get out of my way. I don't like you anymore.
Right.
The two of us have nothing to say to each other. Go away, Mr. or Ms. So, there are things that I can't do that I once could, but I think nostalgia for those particular abilities doesn't seem to be a first order desire that I have. I don't wake up in the morning and wish that I could run around the block or something, whatever I could do before I had neuropathy, or, not have to go color my hair because it's naturally brunette. I don't mind coloring my hair, and I doing what I can to cure the neuropathy and not sign up for the neurologist's forecasts for me, downhill all the way forecasts. The main thing is what is for me to do, and that is not always easy to determine. There is a kind of treasure hunt involved in finding out, and I've been rather strenuously on that treasure hunt, as I now perceive, in recent months. Certain tasks have been accomplished that were long in getting to be accomplished. And at this point, it has now occurred to me that there is another task, that there is a future work that I seem to myself to hear as a calling. And that's interesting because it's not make work. It's not
Right.
what they tell you. You've retired, get a hobby. No, I don't do hobbies. I don't waste my time trying to fill my time. My time is a sacred allotment. What does my time call on me to do that no one else is called on to do in quite that way? And it has partly to do with what I've learned up till now in my time, what has concerned me, and what I rightly or wrongly, dimly or brightly, perceive to be missing in the culture's time, in the time of us all. Well, and, as I said, just to recall the context, Jew hatred seems to be coast to coast, hemisphere to hemisphere, the latest thing. It is not interesting to me to be busy with Jew hatred. It is interesting to me to use the covenantal assignment of teaming with God on the timeline in history and see what the next assignment is.
Well, and
Hatred
maybe
being a sort of a distraction, a plan B. Yeah.
Yeah, let's. I think this would be a good topic next time or whenever you're ready, because I know you have this in mind and are thinking it through as we speak. And so next time might be too soon, but anyway, soon we should start sharing with our community just what that is. And I think it'll be very interesting to everybody.
Yeah.
So that's something to wait for and to look forward to.
And meantime, I've had no time for old age. I'm sure it's a fascinating time of life, but it doesn't fascinate me.
Yeah,
So,
right.
so we can't do much with it.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you, sweetheart, for this intimate dialogue.
Thank you, darling.
Thank you for listening to God and Autobiography, the podcast. Subscribe for free today wherever you listen to your podcasts and hear a new episode every week. You can hear the complete dramatic adaptation of God and Autobiography as Told to a Philosopher by Jerry L. Martin by beginning with Episode 1 of our podcast and listening through its conclusion with Episode 44. You can read the original true story in the book from which this podcast is adapted, God and Autobiography as Told to a Philosopher, available now at Amazon.com and always at godandautobiography.com. Pick up your own copy today. If you have any questions about this or any other episode, please email us at questions@godandautobiography.com and experience the world from God's perspective, as it was told to a philosopher. This is Scott Langdon. I'll see you next time.